This is a short film of our holiday in Switzerland during the school Easter holidays 1962. Before we set off to Folkestone, we had a short stay to sightsee in London, where Buckingham Palace with the Queen Victoria Memorial was much photographed by the girls. The colourful Royal Horse Guard attracted our attention. We boarded the almost new cross-channel steamer on a chilly but pleasant evening. The crossing was comparatively calm, and it didn't far the sandy beaches of Calais, with its many chalets, seemed very near. Here are Joseph, Pauline and Rosalind enjoying the sail. An overnight journey brought us amidst snow to Cushnack. These huge St. Bernard dogs had kennels almost like garden sheds. On our first morning we had a walk around Cushnack, where everything, including Queen Astrid's Memorial Chapel, was covered in snow but looked most picturesque. Only at the beginning of our stay did we see the village square and all these fields across the lake from the hostel, so white. By midday, this had disappeared. We were lucky to see the fountains of Lucerne turn full on, because any wind blows the water over the main road and any cars passing by. We see the twin spires of the cathedral. Leaving Cushnack by train, Rigi, the summit of which was the object of our outing, is seen deeply covered by snow. We understood the snow was 4 to 5 feet deep at the summit, but the mountain railway was still running, so we hadn't to walk it. The sail on the lake steamers was breathtaking. This panoramic view of Lucerne was taken from the steamer. The mountain ranges, in spite of the warm sun, were rather hazy. On reaching the summit of Rigi, Queen of the Mountains, by the mountain railway from Witznau, we found it exhilarating and cold, 0 degrees centigrade. This passage from the hotel to the extreme top had been cut away. Snowballing and leaping through the snow was thoroughly enjoyed by the girls. It was extremely slippery in parts, as Miss Dillon Smith found to her dismay. She soon got up before much film could be shot. Vicky led the way, whilst Rosalind tried the flavour of an icicle hanging from the top of the snowy passage. Miss Yates came in for some rough treatment as we waited for the other mountain railway, which took us through a natural fairyland to Arstoldau. An obliging train driver slowed the train down for us to take these film shots of green Christmas trees, deep snow, A waterfall, the lovely blue lake. Our trips on the coast took us along the wide autobahns, as well as narrow country roads, along the shores of lovely lakes like Lucerne and Sarnen. Our journey to Interlaken took us over the Brunig Pass, which on the Tuesday morning was snow-covered. But by evening, due to the strong foehn winds or warm winds, most of the snow had disappeared. Leaving Interlaken, with its lovely views of the Jungfrau, 11,333 feet high, we made our way to the famous Lauterbrunnen Falls and the Trommelbach Falls. This one is 300 feet. Trommelbach Falls are reached from ground level by a lovely smooth lift up through the rocks themselves. This was typical of the wonderful Swiss engineering. I would have walked, of course. After gazing at the beauty of these falls and getting rather wet from the dripping wet overhanging rocks, we returned to the coast. Here we indulged in packed lunches. Were we hungry? We were lucky enough to both see and hear some less serious avalanches, and I managed to film this one. The road from here to Grindelwald was narrow and twisty. Snow still lay on the lower slopes of this valley, and whilst I tried to take this view of the magnificent Wetterhorn, 12,143 feet high, a fierce gale was blowing. This gale reached 100 miles an hour during the evening, and it did much damage. The dead leaves from the woods were being whipped whirlwind fashion in front of our coach as we returned over the Brunig Pass. On another of our trips to Lucerne, I filmed this famous chapel bridge and water tower, dating from 1333. The history of Lucerne is depicted by paintings all along the length of the bridge. Near the edge of the entry of the river into the lake, a part has been partitioned off to house a variety of wild fowl. View across the lake shows Rigi and the other mountains in this range, now bereft of much of their snow covering. Staff posing on one of the jetties. But snowbound Mount Koloff is behind. We made our way back along the lakefront to the railway station. This is a busy corner with roads and traffic going to well-known stations and cities in Switzerland. The policeman looked very much like one of our own bobbies. This colourful knick-knack stall was near the lake. Here's Miss Dillon Smith giving instructions before boarding the train to Kushnak. Another coach tour was taken on a Thursday morning when the first place of interest was Thun, on Lake Thun, where we were glad to have our packed lunches. Here was a very old castle across the river. Leaving Thun, the Alps seemed to loom to terrific heights, and roads between them impassable. But nevertheless, we found our road up to Blausee narrow but well made. Here at Blausee, we experienced the hottest day of our stay, and to me it was the most enjoyable. The lake, in the midst of colourful woods, was extremely dark blue in colour, and full of huge fish and angler's dream. It was kept free of weeds by an industrious gentleman gardener. Girls enjoyed taking little walks through the woods and studied a variety of flowers growing there. Our bus driver, an extremely understanding and patient man, also enjoyed watching the fish. 3 of our girls by the glacial river near the lake. This restaurant was not open for visitors until Easter, but must do a marvellous trade in the high season. Back in Kushnak, I was interested in the painted patterns under the eaves of some of the hotels, but this does not show them very well. Our visit to Flewellen, a village at one of the southern tips of Lake Lucerne, was very interesting. Leaving the train, we walked to William Tell's chapel, along the road cut out at the side of the rock. This shows the sheer drop of the rock into the lake. Cars in one place had to go through a long tunnel in the rock, whilst the road for pedestrians followed the edge of the precipice. There were large archways cut in the rock to allow light to penetrate. All around here is William Tell country, and so we were not surprised to find scenes from the life of William Tell painted on the walls of the chapel, built in his memory. Here we are waiting for the steamer. Barbara poses. The steamer crawls on its way up the lake at all sorts of little places. One of these, Rutley, we picked up 3 monks who seemed to be enjoying the scenery as much as we were. We disembarked at Brunnen and went by a mountain railway to Morschach, a sunny terrace 720 feet overlooking Lake Lucerne, facing Rutley and the Schillerstone. A short walk took us to Axenstein, with the Swiss flags flying. from where we wound our way down through the picturesque woods to Brunnen and then by train to Kushnak. On the terrace of the Touristenhain restaurant, or gas tube as we called it, these shots were taken. Here are the Meyer family: Martin, mother, grandmother, and Joseph, rather self-conscious about being filmed. Here's Benny the chef with the milk. And Father Meyer, who thought he had to stand very still to be photographed. Marguerite, a popular waitress come chambermaid, who couldn't speak any English, but like the rest of the staff, was always anxious to please. Our hostel. All too soon, our holiday came to an end. Our ferry boat leaving. We are back on the boat called Calais, awaiting to cast off. Here is our luggage coming on board by crane and being put safely in the hold. Leaving Calais in glorious sunshine, we sailed past a car ferry, only to run into fog halfway across the channel. Alas, Folkestone only appeared as a ghostly town to the girl watching from the side of the boat.